Morning's reading is taken from Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30, headed A Story About Three Servants. The kingdom is also like what happened when a man went away and put his 3 servants in charge of all he owned. The man knew what each servant could do, so he handed 5,000 coins to the first servant, 2,000 to the second, and 1,000 to the third. Then he left the country. As soon as the man had gone, the servant with the 5,000 coins used them to earn 5,000 more. The servant who had 2,000 coins did the same with his money and earned 2,000 more. But the servant with 1,000 coins dug a hole and hid his master's money in the ground. Some time later, the master of those servants returned. He called them in and asked them what they had done with his money. The servant who had been given 5,000 coins brought them in with the 5,000 that he had earned. He said, "Sir, you gave me 5,000 coins, and I have earned 5,000 more." "Wonderful," his master replied. "You are a good and faithful servant. I left you in charge of only a little, but now I will put you in charge of much more. Come and share in my happiness." Next, the servant who had been given 2,000 coins came in and said, "Sir, you gave me 2,000 coins, and I have earned 2,000 more." "Wonderful," his master replied. "You are a good and faithful servant. I left you in charge of only a little, but now I will put you in charge of much more. Come and share in my happiness." The servant who had been given 1,000 coins then came in and said, "Sir, I know that you are hard to get along with. You harvest what you don't plant and gather crops where you haven't scattered seed. I was frightened and went out and hid your money in the ground. Here is every single coin." The master of the servant told him, "You are lazy and good for nothing. You know that I harvest what I don't plant and gather crops where I haven't scattered seed. You could have at least put my money in the bank so that I could have earned interest on it." Then the master said, "Now your money will be taken away and given to the servant with 10,000 coins. Everyone who has something will be given more, and they will have more than enough. But everything will be taken from those who don't have anything. You are a worthless servant, and you will be thrown out in the dark, where people will cry and grit their teeth in pain." What do you think about that story that Jesus told? Do you think he was in the right? Or do you think he was a bit hard on the servant that buried the money? Or do you think he was right to call him lazy and chuck him out? What does anybody think? Seems a bit mean, doesn't it? Does seem mean. Well, I think we've got a visitor today. I think Jack's come to see us. Are you there, Jack? Let's see what he thinks.
Hello!
Hi!
Morning, everyone! Morning! Morning!
Hello!
Ooh! Ooh! There's a lot more grown-ups here today, isn't there? And there's a few that look like they might cause a bit of trouble. I hope they're going to behave themselves. What do you reckon, kids? You can keep the grown-ups under control? Very good.
They usually do.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Jack, about the story? Do you think the master was hard on his servant who buried the money?
Yes, absolutely. I think it was dreadful. Very unfair. I mean, he got all his money back, didn't he? I mean, he should have been grateful for that.
Well, yes, he should have been, but has anybody ever given you some money to look after?
Are you mad? Of course they haven't. What do you think would happen? I'll just spend it all on sweets. All they get back is a load of empty sweet wrappers.
Oh, Jack, don't you understand what Jesus is telling us through this parable?
No, not really. Could you explain to me?
Well, God gives us things for us to do his work, and it's up to us to use them sensibly, and do some hard work if necessary to make it more.
What sort of things?
Well, things like money, so we can give to the church and to charities, like our church buildings, so that other groups can use it to help our community, and our personal gifts and skills, such as playing music, making cakes, painting, organising things, mending things and teaching.
Right. But I haven't got any gifts.
Nonsense. Everybody's got some gifts. You find it easy to talk to people and make friends, don't you?
Well, yes, I suppose so.
And you're good at making people laugh, aren't you?
Well, yeah, not always intentionally, but yeah.
Well, they're gifts that God can use. You can use them to bring people to church and to cheer people up.
Oh. Wow, that's brilliant. So, I'm not completely useless then. I always thought I was.
No, of course you're not useless. You just need to remember to use what God gives you. Like the two servants who were given the most coins did. And if you're good at using what God gives you, then God will give you more so that you can do even more for God.
Wow, brilliant. Thanks for explaining that, Louise. I'll go and tell Mia now, when she gets up. Bye everyone, bye! Bye!
Well, Jack thought he was useless because God hadn't given him any gifts or skills. And sometimes we all think we're a bit useless. We say, oh, no, I'm not good at that, and I'm not good at that. And we forget to look at what we are good at. So why don't you all have a little think about the gifts and skills and experience that God has given you and how you can use them to do his work. If it helps, discuss it with the other people at your table. They may have noticed gifts that you have that you haven't even realised. Also, consider writing them down so that you can remind yourself another day.
How you getting on? You done that? You can. You all worked out what gifts you have and that sort of stuff. Good. Didn't take long to it. I hope you do realise you're not completely useless. So it's, I think some of us do think that sometimes, don't we? Think, oh, what have I got? I've got, what have I got? And sometimes, you might be stuck at home and think, oh, what can I do? But we've all been thinking about the gifts and skills and experience that we have, which we can use to do God's work. But what do we mean? What do we mean by God's work? I mean, it's something we talk about in church, isn't it? It's part of our vocabulary. Oh, we're going off to do God's work. You think, that's great, but what is God's work? What exactly do we mean? How many phones have you got in there? Like you on the funeral. What was I saying? Oh yeah, what do you mean by God's work? I mean that churches today are called more than ever to show God's love in the area. That is our work. Show the God's love in the area that we live in. And for us today, this is our harvest. Our harvest is those in physical, emotional and spiritual need. And we must remember that. So doing God's work for us is going out and showing God's love and drawing them to Him, helping them in practical ways, improving people's well-being, improving their self-esteem, and at the end of the day, spiritual healing by bringing them close to God. I think this is our harvest today. And we'll now sing our next song, which reflects very much on this. Jesus Christ is waiting in the streets. One of the ways in which our church gathers in the harvest and shows God's love in the area is through Ramsbottom Pantry, which we're really blessed as a church to have now as part of our church. We only joined really quite recently by church standards. I'm sure everybody's heard about it. We've talked about it, we've discussed it at church meetings and all sorts of things. And if you've been at the back and you've not noticed a container and port cabin, then you really should have gone to Specsavers. But I mean, it looks beautiful. I mean, I think a lot of people were worried, weren't they? Ooh, the port cabin thing might look a bit scruffy and stuff, but in fact, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? With all the garden and everything around it and all the sort of signs. It looks, I think, really, I mean, certainly a lot better than it did before. Not saying a lot. With the builder's yard there. But what you've probably not done well, obviously a few of us have here, but you're not seeing inside, you're not seeing it in operation if you just come down on a Sunday. It's just like closed up container and things. So I thought I'd show you some photographs now. That's inside the container. That's another view there. Just you see the shelves are actually a bit quite low at the moment, but Bev's worried about, you know, the shelves are probably less full and all beautifully organised, isn't it, Carol?
Oh, yes.
Beautifully organised. Yeah, Bev goes in there occasionally and just completely organises everything, but yes, it's fantastically organised. That's a fridge, a big fridge and chill thing that they got given to us for chill. So there's a freezer as well, just where I'm more or less standing. There's a freezer as well. And there's Bev. Hey! That's you can see they sort of put all the stuff out around the front, so people can choose that stuff, like bread and fresh produce. People can just pick up what they want. Is it recording, John?
Yeah, but I want to see the pictures if you're going to start.
Oh, I'll put those in the video. I'll just put those in the video, don't worry about it. And that's Bev and Janet, and that's the other end of the end of the thing. Shelves there looking a bit more healthy, but basically what happens, things go in the container and they get taken to there. And that's the sign that comes up. So basically what's happened is it's something, Stin kills your thumb here, Cal, but it's turning more into a grocery now, where we still do food parcels, but turning into groceries. So people can pay, it's only £3 a week, but obviously can give more if they wish to. And then they can choose those items. And it's all beautifully beautiful signs and stuff. I'm now going to hand over to Carol, who's going to tell us a little bit more about it.
Can I sit here? Or do you want me up there?
No, you can come up here, go on. Come on.
Before I start, can I just say I've had this dropped on me last night at 9:20.
Was it late Saturday? I didn't notice it. Well, yeah, well, use the microphone.
Oh, great.
Thanks a lot. You can take the microphone off and just...
No, it's all right.
Yeah. You can see...
Back at school.
A bit of background here.
Yeah.
Bev was supposed to do it, and Bev's runs the pantry now, and then she sort of somehow double booked herself. And I was going to video. I said, well, don't worry about it. I'll video you, and I'll be starting this video. And we got as far as like the first 2 sentences. And I'll show you sometime. Actually, it's absolutely hilarious because she just got a complete fit of the giggles, and that made me laugh and made her laugh even more. So, and then we're going to do it later. And then she said, "Oh, sorry, Carol said she'll do it."
Carol didn't until she asked me last night. So I've got 5 pages here, but I'm sure you don't want to listen to it.
Just a few key dates.
So my name's Carol, for those that don't know me. I only joined the pantry in January. I'm not on social media, so it was all on social media. But just to give an insight from Bev's point of view, I think Richard asked her what made you get involved with the pantry, didn't you? And she's always lived in Ramsbottom, so most people will know her. So she has a lot of contacts. She's the youngest of 6, didn't have very much money but always had a cooked meal, and then lived on benefits after her divorce. So on the 23rd of October last year she got asked, well she responded rather, to a question about school dinner crisis, because there were some real issues with school dinners last year. And obviously a lot of children, that's their only hot meal that they get throughout the day. So after some discussion, she decided to be the drop-off point, and there is a picture, I think, somewhere, I don't know whether you've got it, of her kitchen table full of all these donations that people had sent in. So literally, she contacted John, I believe, on the 28th of October, and then they moved the stock into the little area where there used to be the cafe, or there still is now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Then they opened on the 2nd of November, and they did 9 food parcels that week. Obviously, you can imagine, just to give you an insight now, by Christmas, they did 45 Christmas hampers, so everybody had food. They had 15 gift bags for children, so all the children got a present. The mums got a present, and they also were provided the whole content of 8 Christmas dinners by, I think, she hasn't put it on here, I think it was the WI that did that, because they do it now for us. So from November, we've now given away 177 food parcels. In January, she started the proposal for the porta cabin, which obviously you've seen out there now, which was a bit of a daunting task, but it's worked out. I'm not going to, you can see it for yourself.
I mean, the reason behind that was that obviously we needed
Yeah,
our building back, wasn't it? Because you spread out
that wasn't
the traffic.
ideal anyway, in
Yeah,
there, was it?
no,
It wasn't.
no.
It was just getting,
Yeah,
because at the time we were getting a lot of donations.
Yeah.
It's sort of peaks and troughs at the moment, so. Obviously, you needed that back, and then it just said we needed to make a fresh start and become a food pantry rather than just a food bank. So hence why it's £3 for a food pantry. So Bev's huge network of people that she knows and customer and businesses in Ramsbottom, we now provide over 50 food packs a week, and we only do Tuesdays and Thursdays. We do an average of 20 food bank packs there for the families that really are struggling, that, you know, even £3 is just not manageable. So we do get to collect waste on twice a week. Mondays and Wednesdays we go to 3 different co-ops and we pick up the food waste, which is like your whoopsies, I suppose most people will know them as, that you see in supermarkets. They're all right for the day after, so our families are grateful. I mean, some weeks we have, you've seen it, some weeks we have like a lot, some weeks we don't. At the moment, the stock levels in the supermarkets, as I'm sure you're all aware, is quite low. So the food waste that we're getting is quite low as well. You can go in and, I mean, last week one of our volunteers went for a bag of pasta. We have hundreds of bags of pasta, but she needed a bag of pasta and she couldn't find a bag of pasta anywhere. And that, it's, and you know, I went in the other day and the shelves are really empty. Tesco's, particularly the bigger ones, they just seem to be. So not only is it petrol that's a shortage, so is a certain amount of food. A bit about me, because I think Bev's just, I mean, you did about summing up, didn't you? We get referrals and things.
Right.
So there's Bev, Emily, who's she started when Bev did. Dorothy, the old lady Dorothy, she's there every Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then there's Christine, myself, and Janet, which you saw Janet on one of the pictures. Just a bit about myself. I've always wanted to do food, Christmas dinners for the homeless, always. And up to a couple of years ago, I was going to do it, but I was very poorly, and in the end, I couldn't do it. I just wasn't able to do it. Having now got a nice titanium hip, I'm a lot better, so I can do things. So I found this on Very Times. I had an article about it. I'd never heard of it. I only live in Edenfield. Spoke to Bev and started, and I absolutely love it. I haven't loved this, but forgive me. I was a bit, but it's very, very worthwhile, and we get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing families, even just by giving them, if it's only 1 bag or 2 bags or 3 bags, just knowing that you're helping them and you're feeding the children. You know, it doesn't matter if they're, regardless of whether the adults smoke or drink, if we know that we're giving children food, that's enough for me. Yeah. So, thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah.
I'm cringing crying.
Yeah, natural.
Oh yeah, right.
The sermon next Sunday, as well. You might wonder what sort of people sort of have to, use the food bank. And I had a chat, lovely chat with the lovely young lady just this last Thursday. And this is her story. She had been, I mean, she had a good job and everything. She'd been air stewardess and she'd been treated very, very badly by her ex. I don't know whether her husband or just partner, I don't know. I think it's probably her husband, but it's her son's father. And she had to escape from her home in Manchester and go into a women's refuge, just escape from him, from the violence. And then she moved from there up to Ramsbottom. She had to go to court to get custody of her son, and had to pay thousands in solicitors' fees because of a technicality. She wasn't able to claim legal aid. And this left her penniless, absolutely no money at all. Everything she had was going into these solicitors' fees so that she wouldn't have her son taken from her. Now, her ex had a restraining order on him because he was violent, but he continued to torment her from afar, sort of mentally, and made false claims in court about her mental health and her ability to raise their son. And she ended up financially and mentally broken. And in her words, reached the point of wanting to give up. And that's what she said to me, but I think you can probably draw your own conclusions by what she meant by that. She had no contact with other people because she just felt so ashamed of what she'd been through, and had absolutely zero self-esteem, no self-confidence at all. It was then, nearly a year ago, that her son's school, it's over a year ago, put her son's school put her in touch with Bev at the pantry, because they realised that she was short of money. She hadn't enough money to even buy food for her son, and so they put her in touch with Bev. In her words, Bev gave her a Christmas, including a present for her son. I mean, what Carol said just now. Present for her son that she had no money to buy herself. And much more than that, Bev became the first, she put it, friendly face that she'd encountered for a long time. And Bev helped her through her troubles and through all the court cases and all that sort of stuff. And this young lady is now back on her feet again. She helps the pantry. She's not one of the regular volunteers, but she does come down and help. Fits it around her work. I say she's a lovely young lady. And this is just one example. This is just one person I spoke to. Sometimes you think, well, they scroungers, whatever, but actually no, there's a lot of really desperate people even living in this area, which we're just not aware of it. In fact, I believe that this not being able to afford food is just the tip of the iceberg. And there are many lonely, vulnerable people in this area who need emotional and spiritual support, even more than they need practical help. Yes, we can give them food, but much more than that, they need emotional, practical help. And I mean, you've done stuff, haven't you? You've go to people's houses and sort of, I've been sort of mending curtains and things, and also.
Bev goes above and beyond.
Oh, she does absolutely. I mean, it's also like things like washing machines and microwaves and freezers and mending tables.
Televisions, we had 2 televisions donated 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah. And then there was a gate that needed fixing to stop a child running onto a street.
School uniforms.
Oh, school uniforms, yeah, that's it. School uniforms.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, 8 school uniforms, wasn't it, this September? Yeah.
And Goody Two Shoes gave all parents vouchers for 50% off school shoes.
Yeah. And they say the local businesses are fantastic. I mean, Morrison's provide
Morrison's just
loads of food. They find uniforms.
Yeah. Morrison's.
And yeah, you said, and there was that place that provides the balloons for birthdays.
Yeah, the shop. Yeah. I buy the present. Morrison's donate the cake, and Louise at the card shop does the fancy balloon with their name on it.
Yeah. And this is.
I
mean, it was just a few weeks ago, wasn't it? And there was, Bev said, there was this young woman that came in, she was really upset because she, for whatever reason, she'd got no money at that particular time. She just couldn't afford anything to buy anything for her son's birthday. And we went down and got the balloon and the everything, and it was cake, and she was absolutely made up. So. All these little things that, they're quite small things, talking to somebody or providing for somebody, actually quite small. But for them, for those people, it's actually enormous. And more than anything else, it actually shows that we care. Somebody cares for them. Somebody's willing to do something for them. And that is just so important. And each one of us can do the same, even if it's just a little chat, even if it's just, or maybe something bigger, or maybe support the pantry, or whatever. We can do things to help them. And this is the way, this is our harvest. This is the way that we can show God's love and then hopefully introduce them to Jesus. We're going to have some prayers now, time of prayer. Who remembers the bubble machine? You remember the bubble machine? You liked the bubble machine, didn't you? Both of you two, didn't you? Yeah. In fact, you were complaining, didn't you, that we haven't seen it often enough. Quite rightly. Here we go. Bubble machine. What happened when we put the bubble machine on? What happened when we put the bubble machine on? Oh, the bubbles! Yay! There we go. Oh, the bubbles gone.
I've got a sore trouble with
Oh, I've forgotten.
the other one.
Luckily I didn't. Right. The bubble mixing.
Sent my dog to the vet on Friday for a vaccine.
Don't need very much, just a little bit, otherwise ages to go
A
down.
lot of water and we examined them.
Hey, there we go. Oh, you got front line seat here. What a laugh. Go ahead with it.
197 just for a blood
Ooh.
test.
Right, you know what happened then? What did you see happen? Do you notice what happened?
Oh, the diabetic or whatever. I don't know.
Good, isn't it? What happened? I turned it on. Nothing happened because I've forgotten to put the bubble mix in. No bubbles. Then I put a little tiny bit of fluid. Only put a little tiny bit in, does it? Only put needed a little tiny bit. And all of a sudden, loads of bubbles. And what we've been talking about is doing God's work, isn't it? And we've been saying, remember the gifts, the talents, we do our bit, and then God magnifies what we do to show His love in the area. And it's a bit like this bubble machine. Mind you, if we don't do our little bit, we don't put the bubble fluid in, you can come and play with that. You come in here. You want to play in bubbles? Anybody else feel like it? Come on, Betty, come here. If we don't use what God's given us, then we don't get God's love all over the place. But when we do put our little bit in, then wow, God magnifies it, and just a little tiny bit of fluid turns into massive loads and loads of bubbles. And just like that, we do our little bit, what little bit we've got, and pow, God's love is shown. And there's the bubbles going all over the place. I mean, actually not that far, I mean, getting a fair few. Yeah, it's going quite a long way, aren't they? Yeah. And it's like that with God's love. We can do something, and God's love is shown, and it goes a long way. Because somebody will tell somebody else, think, oh, you know what those nice people down at Christchurch did? They helped me do this, that and the other, or they were kind to me, or they spoke nice to me. And then, oh, that was great. And then, God's love is, go on. Don't be shy. So what thoughts are we talking about? Well, we're just talking about maybe just being helpful, or, well, they've been upstage, but anyway. Just do something helpful, perhaps finding somebody food, or just like Bev did, just talking to that young lady, just helping that young lady, for which she'll always remember, Bev didn't do a lot really. She just spoke to somebody, we took her out for a sandwich, but it made so much difference. And this is, I think, what we forget. We think, oh, we've got to do all this and this and this, but you can just take a little bit, and it just makes so much difference. Or maybe just giving a bit of money to an overseas charity, again, that can be used. We can give a £5 to an overseas charity, and that can afford, that will buy a meal for a child for a whole week. Oh, what's happened? There's me telling you it didn't need much. That's fine. I'll teach you. There we go. I need a bit more, isn't it? Oh, he let me down. We won't bother looking for that as an illustration. So, our witness to God's love is seen in all these ways, just doing little things in community, just talking to people, helping people in different ways. And if we do that, God's love will be seen far and wide, in this area and elsewhere. We'll just turn it off for now, and then we'll turn it back on later if you want. So if we do that, then we will be like, remember the parable, the reading? By reading the parable we heard? We will be like God's good and faithful servants. Jesus will say to us, you are my good and faithful servant. Isn't that what we want? And we do that by magnifying what God has given us and showing us his love in ways that go far beyond what we can imagine. And I was going to do a discussion moment as I later one. Oops. We'll miss that for now. Instead, just let's have a short prayer, and then we'll finish with a song, and then we'll have coffee. Let's pray. Dear Lord, help us to recognise our gifts, skill and experience.
Put me under him.
Give us opportunities to do your work and to show your love far and wide. Lord, help us to be generous and not withhold what we have, remembering all that we have comes from you. Lord, we know that the harvest is plentiful, and Lord, we offer ourselves to be your workers in your harvest fields. Encourage us and inspire us. Help us not to be disheartened when it seems that we're gathering in no harvest. Help us to take delight simply by doing whatever you call us to do, with you walking in front of us. Just trusting that you magnify what we do in ways that we may never realise. And Lord, help us to trust that when we're obedient, you will use us in amazing ways to show your love and reach to those who do not yet know you. And Lord, just help us, we pray, to be your good and faithful servants. Amen.
Amen.